Okay, welcome to part 3 of making a branding iron. This last part, I need to make a handle. So I took a piece of ash, I think it was about 2 inch by 2 inch by about 7 inches long. Mounted that up in my lathe, took the roughing gouge, got it all round, and just kind of gave it the outline of the basic shape I was after. I then used an Easy Wood Tools, I think they call it a finisher or something like that. It's the one that has a round cutter. I used that to kind of refine the shape of the handle. I wanted kind of a fat end for my palm, and then on the end where the ferrule was going to go, I wanted a bit of a swell so I would have something for my thumb to push against. I also used the Easy Wood Tools rougher to add a tenon on both ends. The tenon on the right is to accept a ferrule, and the tenon on the left is so that I can mount this handle up in the chuck and then drill a hole on the ferrule end to accept the rod that I made in video 2. So then I did a lot of sanding, just kind of smooth out the imperfections, make it nice and comfy. I think I took it up to about 400 grit. And then for the finish, I tried something I'd seen before with pen makers that I hadn't really ever done. I just used CA glue, just the regular cyanoacrylate glue or super glue, as it's more commonly known. You apply some of that to a rag and then just add it as the thing spins. It cures almost instantly, and it actually takes a fairly decent shine. So once that was done, I sawed off the end of the tenon that needed to go into the chuck. And then I also marked on the ferrule end where I needed to trim that tenon so that the ferrule would fit appropriately. I mounted my drilling chuck to the tailstock with a 3/8 inch brad point bit. I was getting a little bit of wobble from the handle. I haven't quite figured that out just yet, but it still turned out okay. I did need to go kind of deep. I wanted to have the handle go in about 3 inches. So I did have to move the tailstock several times. And then I used a small drill bit to just check the depth. And then after what felt like about 30 passes, I finally got it to about the 3-inch depth that I was looking for. So then, with that complete, I cut off the tenon that was used to hold this in the chuck, trimmed off a little bit of the excess with a chisel, did a quick test fit, everything looks good. Now I need to trim the tenon for the ferrule so that it'll be the right length. And then I also cut a couple of relief grooves in that tenon so that it can compress a little bit as I put the ferrule on so I could get a tight fit. To make the ferrule, I used a brass pneumatic ferrule. You can get these at hose supply shops. I took a small piece of 3/4 inch dowel and turned the diameter a little bit thinner so that the ferrule would fit over it. Mounted that up in the chuck and went through several grits of sandpaper, starting with about 120. There was 2 reasons for that. One was to remove the factory finish that was on there, which was really dull, and then there was also a small imprint that was some sort of maker's mark from the factory, and I wanted to sand that out. Once that was sanded up to 800 grit, I gave it a couple squirts of lacquer just to protect it and kind of reduce it getting a patina. Now, using the tenon for the ferrule, I mounted the handle back up in the chuck and sanded off the little bit of a nub that was left from the other tenon. Then with a little bit more super glue, I added some finish to that end and blended it in with the finish that I had added previously. Then I mixed up a fair bit of epoxy and stuck a whole bunch of that down inside the handle, and I tried to also fit some in those relief grooves that I cut in the tenon for the ferrule. Slid the handle down. Did a little bit of cleanup because I didn't want the ferrule to squeeze any of this out. Put the stamp on, and then I just let it dry for a couple hours. It was ready to go. I picked up a propane torch so that I could test this out. And this is one thing I'll have to experiment with. How hot I need to actually get that stamp to get the mark that I'm after. How long I need to hold it against the wood, and how much pressure I need to use. I do need some practice trying to get this to look the way that I want, but I'm really happy with the results. One thing that I would do differently, the tenon that I cut for the ferrule was just a little bit too snug. I should have gone just a hair thinner on that to get it seated all the way. All in, I think this project cost about 25 bucks for all of the parts, so it was really cheap, especially compared to the Rockler service that I mentioned in the first video. So that's my branding iron. I hope this 3-video series was at least a little bit helpful and maybe even a tad entertaining. Making a branding iron really isn't all that hard, and I thought it was a fun process. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, and please subscribe if you want to see more of the things that I do in my shop. We'll see you next time.